Hello and welcome to Cumulus Global's Third Tuesday at 3 series. For August, our topic is Make IT Decisions with Confidence. I'm Alan Falcon, CEO of Cumulus Global, one of the co-founders. I want to thank you for joining us here today. I know it's often difficult taking time out of your busy week. Just a quick note that on the live broadcast, we were having some audio trouble. So I'm re-recording this so you get a clear and better sound. So the content will be a little bit updated and different, and hopefully a little more useful and effective for you without the audio interference. A quick reminder that these webcasts and other events we do are just one of the many resources we offer in our resource center on the website. We have things you can read, watch, and dive deep to explore. We've added a number of new items to the library. It's a great place to look for resources around IT and cloud solutions for small and mid-sized businesses, as well as everything that's really happening relative to small businesses in AI. We've got a large number of items that we've added and information we've added about artificial intelligence specifically for the SMB community. So please check it out when you have a time and have a few moments. Diving into our topic today, we're talking about making IT decisions, making them better. The big issue that we see is trust. And it's not really even the trust between you and those of us who are IT service providers who want to provide those services. Oftentimes it's a trust issue within your organization. Do you trust your ability to make the best decision? And what we're finding is that a lot of small, mid-sized businesses aren't much different than larger corporations, and that they have trouble trusting that they're making the right decision, that they're making the decision well, and that they're doing it at the right time. And that trust really comes down to a couple of common roadblocks that we see. And the first is that today there's just too much information. Everybody has access to Google and now generative AI and AI-based searches. And so you're looking for a solution to a problem, you're searching on it, you're researching products and services, and you're getting way too much information. It's a lot of overload, a lot of it's marketing hype. It's hard to process. In addition, you have too many options. There's so many organizations trying to offer you services, so many vendors with solutions. And for each vendor with solution, there's 1,000 people of an opinion on whether it's good or bad. What most of that information doesn't contain, or most of those options and opinions don't contain, is your needs and priorities. And that's where things break down. So if you have too little process backed by commitment and how you're going to manage making IT decisions, it's easy to get analysis paralysis with all of that information. And some of the things we commonly see because of this information and option, we'll see a company where, whether it's internal or external IT professionals, assess a business need, define the IT requirements, go out, identify half a dozen solutions, narrow it down to 2, present them with options, option 1, option 2, they each have their benefits, they each have different costs. It's a business decision on priorities and which one you pick. And late in the game, someone says, well, we're looking at these 2. Well, what about number 5? Oh, we've looked at that and discounted it. Why? Let's go back. Oh, what about option 8 that, or vendor 8 that you didn't even look at, or was that, to begin with? Well, why aren't we looking at that? Or, hey, I talked to someone who owns this other business 2 years ago. They made this other decision. They went with this provider we may or may not be exploring. Why aren't we going with them? You get all these questions and feedback late in the game. And it's difficult, therefore, to present the recommendations, have them assessed and acted upon. We're going to talk about how to improve the process to eliminate those late objections and other, to lack of a better term, interference that can make it difficult or erode trust in the process. And let's face it, if you're a CIO or a business owner or CEO and you task your IT resources with coming up with a solution, they come and present you options and you talk to a peer and go back to your own team or the team that did the work for you and say, well, what about X? What you're saying is, I know you put all this time and effort into it. I'm assuming you didn't properly look at this other thing, and therefore I'm going to question your judgment and not make a decision. And it's extremely demoralizing and damaging to the individuals as well as the organization when that happens, because it breeds distrust. And going forward, you have a team that will be shy about doing the work and bringing it forward, knowing that outside influence or curiosity or not trusting them that they've done the analysis and are making the right recommendations leads to problems. So let's talk about solving the problem. The first step of solving the problem is defining the problem. And I know it sounds a little cliche, but know your why. Okay, know your why is a little out of context here. It's often about our own personal mission and beliefs, but it works well for IT decisions too. Map every IT decision you're making, small or large, highly critical or marginally significant, because we make those too, first and foremost to your business goals and objectives. What are you trying to achieve with your business strategically? What are you doing tactically? What do you need in the long term and the near term? And those should be prioritized. What's most important for your business? How are you measuring success? What results are you looking for? Those results and what you're looking for will define your IT goals and objectives. What do you need IT to do service-wise? What quality, what scope of services, what capabilities do you need? What are the objectives in providing those? So if you're going to say, hey, I want to radically reduce the time it takes to generate proposals so clients perceive us and experience us as responsive even in the sales process, then that's going to lead to some IT goals as far as being able to prepare the proposals and objectives about things that can shorten that time frame. And so IT goals can be seen as strategy and objectives as tactics is another way of looking at it. You want those, and those need to be prioritized. And each IT goal and objective should identify which business goals and objectives as prioritized they're addressing. And the final thing is budget expectations. The number of times we walk into engagements where there's unrealistic budget expectations, either people are expecting to spend too little or expecting to spend much more than they actually need to get the problem solved. And so there needs to be a process for level setting budget expectations so you know how far you'll get in your goals and priorities and objectives as you go through the process. And so it really starts with your requirements analysis. We take those business goals and objectives and define them as business drivers. There are also some constraints that are like we can't do X or Y. And that could be partly because you're a regulated industry or you have industry standards like PCI. If you take credit cards, you have to adhere to. Things of that nature can constrain your business. You can also be constrained by budget or by market and even local regulations. Those business drivers have, business goals and objectives, and business drivers generate your IT goals and objectives. Those are your IT drivers and constraints. Again, the same thing. Your IT drivers are what are the things you need IT to do, what's driving your decisions, and it's prioritized. So some organizations will make it at a strategy level, we want to be all cloud or we want to be hybrid. That's a driver. It's also a constraint because you're limiting your choices that you look at when you are making IT decisions. But IT drivers can also be other things like we need things highly integrated. We want to minimize administration and overhead. We want to automate as much as possible. We want to operate, provide a good customer or user experience regardless of time zone. These are all IT drivers that come in that should support the business drivers. IT drivers then in constraints will lead to, and where you add in now your functional priorities. This is what is the system or the decision you're making. You want IT to do something. You want it to do it better or differently or do something it's not doing for you right now at all. And those are your functional priorities. And I know most people will think needs, wants, and nice to haves. We break it out a little differently. We start with the needs and break it into two. There are critical needs that you can't live without. And they're mandated needs that you're required to do, again, possibly because of governmental regulation or industry standards or competitive positioning or operating environment. So for example, we've got many small businesses now who have single person remote offices or a lot of high people working from home. They have a critical need to make sure that the performance and the access to applications and information for the remote workers are no different and no worse performing and no worse reliably than someone sitting in the office. And so you have those critical and mandated needs that you absolutely must have. And then you have the feature needs, and these get prioritized as well. Which features are most important, which will have the most impact now and in the future. Then come the wants. Hey, all else being equal, we want to be able to do X and Y and Z. We understand we might not be able to do it, but with the wants, here's the high priority wants that make it better. And then there's the if possible. And oftentimes ideas and suggestions you get might be beyond the scope of the actual project or your goals and objectives, but people would like to see it. oh, if possible, it would be great to do this at the same time or have this included. And the key is here is how you look at needs versus wants in the decision process. If you have the majority of your needs met, but very few of your wants, do you still go forward? And if the answer is no, because you'd like to see more wants included, then aren't some of those wants actually needs? In general, you should never, the definition of a want is something you want, but you'll go forward without it because it's not a need. And if you use that as a definition, you'll get a better clear of what needs to be included, and you include that in your prioritization. And prioritizations are, important because the research might show that there's 3 solutions. Then you eliminate one for, scope or budgetary constraints. You have 2, and you say, okay, option A meets 85% of our needs and has, 20% of our wants. Option B meets 75% of our needs and 70% of our wants. Option B costs a little less. Which do you choose? Now, I can't tell you which one to choose there, but again, you're weighing needs versus wants. You're weighing budget considerations, ongoing future proofing, etc. All of those components in your analysis, you'll make that balance. It becomes a business decision, not a technology decision. And the best IT decisions are business decisions. This process is all about managing people. The technology, as complex as it can be, it's going to sound like an oxymoron, it's pretty straightforward. You can assess whether the technology does what you want now, whether it has the capability to do what you want it to do later, whether the vendor is going to be reliable or even exist in 5 years. You can do all sorts of analysis around it. Managing the people part of making IT decisions is where things get really complex. So let's talk about who's involved in the decision. And again, you've probably heard, well, there's decision makers and influencers, etc. We look at it slightly differently. Yes, you start with the decision makers. These are the people who are going to sign. They're the ones who are going to finally say yes or no, we're doing it. It can be one person, it can be a committee that's responsible for making the decision. The key point is, if the person who's going to sign off on the spending isn't on the team of decision makers, then the stated or unstated contract, if you will, or commitment between that individual and the team of decision makers is when the decision makers make their decision, it's going to get executed and not get questioned yet again. The next circle out of that core group of decision makers are the subject matter experts. These are the people who understand the business process, the goals, objectives, needs, priorities. They're your technical people who are, whether they're inside or outside resources, who are experts on the technology and its application in your industry and the type of need you're looking for. They're the ones who are going to be doing the research and coming back and pulling things together. The subject matter experts are often referred to as the recommenders. We don't like calling it recommenders because if you're an executive or a leader in a small or mid-sized business, you have lots of people who are going to recommend things to you who are not subject matter experts. And so we'd rather have you listen to the subject matter experts for those recommendations than other individuals. That's not to say you don't sanity check, that you don't benchmark, etc. It's that you want the subject matter experts pulling together your recommendations. You should be trusting the experts for what they know and what they do. The next is where the influencers come in. These are people who influence decisions or who have valued and valuable feedback to provide. So let's say, in going back to our example with the proposal, right? You're going to have key salespeople who are highly productive, who understand the process. Those salespeople will probably provide very valuable feedback and very valued feedback on the process that's followed now, how it works, where there are bumps, what information they need, what will make it flow better. They might even have ideas to improve the process itself as you're implementing the new technology. You want them involved in the project. You want to share what you're doing. They're going to be, the valued feedback will help in your requirements analysis and your prioritization of those requirements and how you evaluate solutions. They can also provide value feedback if you're doing any sort of pilot or proof of concept. Influencers don't necessarily have that direct knowledge, but there are individuals who will chime in or who may have a role where they're going to be asked. So an influencer can be someone outside of the project who has ideas about it. It can be your friend who has this role in another company, or if you're the CEO, you see other CEOs from your peer group. Influence can even be, the analysts, IT analysts who are, reviewing products and making recommendations and what quadrant or trifecta it sits in their little chart of comparison of tools that you might look at. Those are influencers. You want to understand the role of influencers in the project because they can be helpful. They can be also incredibly disruptive, causing a huge waste of time, energy, effort, and sometimes even money. And finally, you've got people who have ideas, who want to provide input. These are people who don't necessarily have the subject matter expert. They don't have the perspective to provide valued feedback or the direct in relationship with what you're trying to do to provide the valued feedback. And they don't have the standing to provide legitimate influence. And yet they're out there, they're going to be vocal. Sometimes their ideas have merit and are worth exploring. Other times it's input you need to hear. The challenge is a lot of people say, you know what, let's not even get those people involved. Let's just not do it. The problem is any system or change you put in needs buy-in. And the people who use it need to buy in and feel comfortable with the change. Otherwise, it's more disruptive than it has to be. So having a mechanism where those individuals can provide input, it can be heard, the input can be logged, considered, is great. You're not going to hold up a project for them to provide their feedback or their ideas, but it's okay to solicit and get that input and include it in an appropriately weighted manner in your decision process. Those individuals then feel included, they're part of the process. It's easier to get the buy-in, acceptance, and their support as you make changes. Change management is something that we all constantly worry about. So you have those roles, and you seem to be able to map them pretty well into where they fit in, but the real question is, who should be in the room? It's easy to say, hey, the users who can use this the most should be in the room when we're writing our requirements, but it should be tempered by what their managers say and what we want to do and how we want to run the process, not what the salesperson thinks, what the sales manager and the chief revenue officer think holds more weight. We want to balance it. Certainly, we want our salespeople to test it and tell if it's going to work for them. We want it to be the people with the valued input who've got the perspective and who are willing to change to make things better, right? At the same time, you probably don't need all of your salespeople on a pilot or a proof of concept. So when you think about who should be in the room, it's really at any phase of the process, who is needed for that function, who do you want to be providing input, who wants to be there, and who should you invite in so that they have a glimpse or that part of the process so they don't question that part of the process later on. They've had their ability to provide input. So informal influencers within the company or even certain consultants or contractors might be good. The folks who are always questioning and the folks who are challenging, right? What you don't want to have happen is go through this whole effort and say, hey, we're coming up with these recommendations and it's the what about this, or I heard about that, or so-and-so, is seeing what you're doing and they're concerned about X, Y, Z. You can deflect the late objections and the late interference by strategically including some of those individuals or the more vocal individuals in parts of the process as we go along the way. And so what are those processes when you think about who should be in the room? Who's a good person to help you identify and prioritize the business and IT drivers? This is generally top-down, but again, having mid-level frontline managers and supervisors participate to a certain extent, and certain vetted or qualified or filtered how you're going to do it, selected individual contributors, staff members can be valuable. Same thing with the requirements definition, going through the review and refinement process. And you can have different people writing the requirements and other people reviewing and making suggestions and asking questions. So for example, if you look at past decision makers, who raised the last minute objection last time? So this time go back and say, hey, look, we've drafted these requirements. Last time we were doing something, you kept saying, what about this? What about that? We want you to look at our requirements and see if there's anything we should be thinking about that you see that we haven't thought of, and give them that opportunity. Because later on, if they say, well, what about X? It's like, well, hey, you reviewed the requirements, you were comfortable with it. Now you're throwing in another requirement. Where's that coming from and why? Like, why didn't you see it before? And how does that impact things, right? You can better manage and scale those in. Same thing as you move through the solution processing. We always talk about, oftentimes there are folks who are like, well, I hear this interface is better or whatever. those are folks you may want. They might not provide detailed information, but you might want them to see the demo or pilots and proof of concepts. All of that's possibility. No, however, we're always cautious with pilots and proofs of concepts. It's pilots and POCs are often where great projects go to die. Why? Because pilots require a commitment, which is time and effort, and quite often for the people using the system, duplication of effort. They've got to do their normal week-to-week, day-to-day task in the current system, then they have to replicate it in the test system to see how it works, and then put in the thought time to say what's better, what's worse, how is this, is there an improvement in the process, or is this a better way to make the current process running, and get that feedback. And so because of that, we often see people sign up for pilots, they talk to the vendor, they get a 2-week pilot test. We check in, or the vendor checks in after 3-4 days, oh, no one's logged in yet. Reach out to the client, takes another couple days to get back. Well, we haven't really had time, this is going on. Well, there's only one more week left. Here's a checklist of things to have people do. It doesn't get done. And then you get to the point where, well, how are we going to go forward when we haven't, even though we did a pilot, we really didn't learn anything from it. That's the danger of pilots. Think about, again, who's in the room and who's participating. That narrows the focus of what you're trying to do, and make sure that the folks who you might not feel provide value, but they could be disruptive, have a say in the process early on. And that goes through selection, the scoring and ranking process, the final recommendations, and the final selection. So this sounds really complex because you're managing people even more than you are managing technology. And most of us watching this, if you're watching this video, there's a better than even chance that you're on the technology side, even if you hold a C-level title. And it's the nature of who we work with as, when we work with small and mid-sized companies. So here's some tips, tricks, and techniques that can help make the process more efficient and implement some of the things we've talked about. First of all, set a ground rule about commitments. Participation is not guaranteed, no matter who you are in the company, and your participation equals action and communication. If you ask someone to review and rank priorities, give them a deadline. If they haven't responded, a day before the deadline, if you've given them a week, follow up and say, reminder, it's tomorrow. If they miss the deadline and you can afford it, give them an extra half a day or a day. If no, they're done. It's like, hey, clearly, we understand you're busy, you don't have time to participate right now. We're getting feedback from other people. We appreciate your interest, right? Let them go. You don't keep chasing people who, unless you absolutely need their input or their input's so valuable, the project depends on it. Don't keep chasing delay after delay because someone isn't prioritizing this work, or deal with management and leadership to get them to prioritize the work and move on. Documentation is critical, and not just meetings and taking notes and everything like that. All actions that are happening, tasks and results. So if someone is asked to test something or to review information, document that they've been asked to do it, what the tasks were. And when they come back for the review, document the results of their review, integrate it with everyone else's. This is easier to do now with AI and Gen AI tools, particularly around meetings and action items and follow-up. One of the things we recommend, I'm sure you've heard about frequently asked questions, FAQs, or Q&A sessions. That's great. We like to create, as part of that documentation, asked and answered. And what are we really talking about here? When questions get asked or when research is done, the answers and the results are documented. And the goal of that documentation is to create the because statements. So when if you've looked at 5 options or 5 possible solutions, let's say solutions A through E, and you didn't look at F, G, and H because of certain reasons, that's a decision. You document that decision. Oh, our research showed it doesn't work well in hybrid mode, and it's a top priority for us. Because what you want to be able to do is down the road, if someone says, oh, I like A through E, but what about G? You can say, we looked at it and ruled it out because you've got the because statement. Because it doesn't serve enough priorities. Because it doesn't integrate well, because it's going to be too expensive, because it's not really designed for our industry. You can really both offset the negative or interfering feedback, or even if it's just legitimate good curiosity, you can manage and respond to that more easily and get people focused on the options being presented. If you have those 5 options and you've narrowed it down to 2, you're going to present either as a recommendation and an alternative, which is never a bad idea to, well, sometimes it is, but mostly it's not a bad idea to do. Then you say, well, we looked at these 3 options. We didn't choose them. We didn't choose option C because of this, option D because of these reasons, E because of these. And by the way, early on, we know that F, G, and H are well known in the industry. We did not investigate those in detail because this, and this. It deflects the objections, it deflects and answers some of the curiosity questions so they don't become an impediment to having a decision being made. That ask and answer, those because statements, are critical. A comment here as you go through it, one of the things people get hung up in is best of breed. Oh, we heard that this tool is the best. Oh, this tool is the highest rated. Oh, this consulting firm that may or may not, rate products well based on how much they spend for marketing guidance, puts this in, the top quintuplet special segment of their plot graph, whatever. People get caught up with best of breed, and while it can be a great reference point, it creates a false utopian ideal because, we're going to have the best of breed for us. The challenge is you really want best fit. And the example is the reason I picked a Sony stereo ad from 1980s. I know you can do more on your iPhone or your Android device than this whole setup can do from an audio quality standpoint. But back in the 80s, if you were an audiophile, if you really liked music, you bought a turntable, a mix, a preamp, an amp, a tape deck, and you had your speakers, and it all fit together with a tuner for radio stations if you listen to radio. And the challenge is, I use my brother as an example here. I still pick on him today because in high school he got some jobs, he worked, he saved up a lot of money. He went and got a top of the line Bang & Olufsen turntable. He got a metal tape deck, which was the highest quality cassette tapes you can use, high-end amp and preamp and tuner, and he didn't have any more money left to upgrade his speakers. And if you listen to the old stereo that he replaced and the new stereo with all these high-end components, you couldn't tell the difference. And the reason is it was mismatched. It didn't matter how good the turntable was. The turntable's output was better than the speakers could produce. The speakers became the limiting factor. And so what he missed is he would have been better off spending less on all of the other components and also being able to upgrade his speakers to match. Best fit is when the sum of the parts are better than the whole. They make a better whole, is really the best way to phrase it. It's a better integrated solution. And when you focus on best fit, you've got a better defense against late opinions. Why? Because a lot of the late opinions or outside influencer that can come into the project are all about, what about X, which is best of breed? Or this company, the leader in our industry, does Y. How come we're not going to do that as well? The defense is, well, it's best fit. Oh, yes. We looked at Y, and it doesn't integrate with this. It would require this other thing and a higher operating cost. Whatever the reasons are, you've got your because statements, right, that you can defend against. But part of it is that you're looking at best fit. And best fit doesn't just get into budget. It gets into administration and management and what's involved operationally, total cost of ownership, how complex is it going to be to integrate into other systems, into your processes. All of that comes into play. Does it solve your needs short term? Does it allow you to grow and solve your needs long term? All of that is best breed and best of fit consideration. And focusing on best of fit makes the process go more smoothly. So now you get to the final countdown, the decision time. People ask me, well, when do you make the decision? How do you get people to make the decision? You make the decision when you identify the solution that's within your budget that best maps to your prioritized requirement, IT drivers, and your business drivers. That's when you make the decision. If you can say, hey, even if you have 2 alternatives or 3 alternatives, I've got 3 alternatives. Here's how they map into our prioritized business requirements, our IT drivers, and our business drivers. And our functional requirements have been prioritized. This one has the most needs. Here's how they are budget-wise. Then it's a business decision that says, and you recommend, the best solution is A, the best alternative is B, another option is C. The difference between A, B, and C most often is going to be, sometimes it's quantity of priorities that are met and needs versus wants. Other times it's price. That becomes a business decision, especially if the difference is price. Oh, A is the best solution, but it costs X% more than B. It's a business decision. It's that extra capability. Are those extra capabilities, features, functions, priorities worth the increase in cost, the delta? If not, it's B. And same thing when you look at B and C. So having those components, at that point, you've got the information, you trust. At this point, you should not be asking, well, does it do X, does it do Y, how does it fit with Y? Those have all been resolved by that mapping that says it does this based on our requirements. You found, basically, it's almost like you found what you're looking for. It's okay to stop shopping. Well, what about XYZ company? I just heard about them. They're new. They're a startup. They have no track record. That's why we're not looking at them, because of those reasons, right? You're able to do it and get everyone to focus on, here are the options, or here's the solution we're recommending, or 2 solutions, or 3. Here's the ranked choice of how we recommend. Here's the cost difference and the differences. Make the business decision what's best. You can, at that point, with confidence, go forward and make the decision. So I've covered a lot of ground. You may have questions. Given that this is a re-recording, the best thing to do if you have questions is to contact us. Reach us at info@cumulusglobal.com, or you can actually schedule a meeting yourself directly with one of our cloud advisors using the bit.ly CG intro call there, or scanning that safe QR code. You can reach out to me directly, Falcon@cumulusglobal.com. My phone number's there. Don't call. I'm bad at answering the phone if I'm busy, and I certainly am horrible about following up on voicemail. If you send me an email, I get it. I don't have an assistant, so if I can't get back to you quickly, I will have someone on my team get back to you, and we'll connect, and we'll make things happen. On that note, I want to thank you for joining me, and for whether you joined us live or watching this recording, taking time out of your busy day and week for our 3T3 series. Hopefully it helped you understand ways to make IT decisions with more confidence and more confidently. Feel free to follow up, and look forward to seeing you at a future event. And please take advantage of our research center. Have a great day. Have a great week.